I'm delighted to say I'm joined by Aimee Campbell, and Aimee Campbell has been recently appointed as Ambassador for FND Ireland, and she's joined me on the line. Aimee, welcome to Dundalk FM.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Aimee. Hi. We'll talk about FND, the Functional Neurological Disorder, in due course, but I want to tell people to know, before the diagnosis, tell me a bit about yourself.
So before I was diagnosed, I was very active. I grew up as an Irish dancer from the age of 3. So I competed at quite high levels of championships, like the Worlds and All Ireland, etc. And I was never a child that I was never like, I would never get sick very often, you know. I wouldn't attend the GP too much. And then as I got older and finished school, I then worked as a healthcare assistant for 4 years then before my diagnosis. So I had a pretty steady life. Active life,
as any young person would have.
Yeah.
Now, the pathway, and we will discuss that because that is one of the things that the FND Ireland want to highlight, is the advocacy and also pathways into the HSC. Tell me about your diagnosis and how you discovered you had FND.
So I was diagnosed in 2017. What happened was, just one morning I woke up and I felt my whole body quite weak. Now I was on holidays when it happened, so I was thinking I was just drained from, you know, the heat and whatever. But then on the way home on the plane, my arms and legs, I couldn't feel them anymore. And so when I got off the plane, we went to the hospital, and there I was diagnosed with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is another neurological condition. So it wasn't until 4 years after this that I was actually diagnosed with FND. So I still call the Guillain-Barré my first flare-up, because technically it was. So that flare-up lasted for 4 months. So I lost the use of both my arms and both my legs. And I was on an NG tube and had bladder problems as well. So I was given a urinary catheter at the time. So things kind of went from there. I spent 4 months in hospital recovering. And yeah, when I recovered, I was pretty much okay. But it wasn't until 2020 when I had another smaller flare-up that it was actually realised that it was FND and not Guillain-Barré syndrome at all.
The Guillain-Barré syndrome is a sort of a one-off thing, is it? While the FND is a more permanent condition.
Yeah, so Guillain-Barré is kind of like a once-off kind of illness, whereas FND, it's a flare-up and remission type illness, so it can come and go.
From your own perspective, I know you're paralysed, 2 legs and 1 arm, I think. Is that correct, Aimee?
At the moment, yeah. So I had another flare-up in July last year. So far, it's been the longest and worst flare-up that I've had. So I have lost the use of my left arm, both my legs. I have urinary catheters still from back in 2017, the original flare-up. I'm now tube fed. I was on a nasogastric tube, but recently I had surgery to put the tube into my stomach to make it more permanent, as unfortunately things aren't changing for me at the moment, so I need a more long-term solution for feeding. Through that tube I have to get my medication, I have to get all fluids because I have difficulty swallowing as well, and I also have seizures. So
tell me about the seizures, because you do differentiate between epilepsy and the FND seizure.
Yeah, so epileptic seizures are a problem with the electrical wiring kind of in the brain, whereas functional seizures, they're more of like a functional problem with the brain. So the way I can explain it would be like, if there's too much going on around me, if I'm too stressed, if I don't get enough sleep or whatever, my brain will kind of just hit a trip switch basically, and that will be a seizure. And it's kind of like a reset. It needs to reset itself, my brain, nearly. but they are very scary because they look very like epileptic seizures. So for family and people around me, it's quite scary, but they don't get treated the same as epilepsy. So the medication for epilepsy won't work for functional seizures. And unfortunately, in the past, it has led to me being put on a ventilator in hospital, just because there's not a huge understanding of functional seizures out there, you know.
Yeah, it's a sort of it's a sort of new to people. Although you would hope that medically speaking, it's not new to people. You mentioned about having to go on a respirator at times. Can you sleep without the aid of a breathing apparatus?
Yeah, I can now. Sometimes when I'm in hospital, I do need oxygen. Sometimes I may need like a nebulizer or something. But at the moment at home, I'm doing good. Yeah, I don't need any help with breathing support yet. You had
a bit of a fight, and I just read about it. You had a bit of a fight on your hands to get home care, that you were deemed ineligible. That's astonishing to think. What? Tell me about that.
Yeah. So from July 2023 to November, I spent in hospital, and we kind of came to the conclusion that things weren't, improving for me. So we were trying to transition then into the community. And I was told I would have home care support. So it was applied for and everything before I left the hospital. But unfortunately, the week after, they had come back, the HSE had come back and declined my application, as FND is not on the list of criteria for home care support.
Is that because it's not? There isn't a huge instance of in Ireland?
It is and it isn't. So originally it was on the list of criteria, but because some people with FND, you may never even realise they have it. They might not show, like their symptoms might not be visible. But unfortunately for me, my symptoms are very severe and probably at the more severe end of things than normal. But so that's why it was taken off the list of criteria, because not many people were needing the support. So when they came back and said that I wasn't accepted, it was quite difficult. As you can imagine, I have to have everything done for me at home, so I need a lot of help. So we took to social media, and the politicians' fair play really helped me along the way, and I was granted my home care support. I have since then been appointed as Awareness Ambassador for FND Ireland, and recently we had a presentation in Leinster House, and we are hoping that things will change for people with FND now soon enough.
You want this critical pathway into the HSE, because if you go to a doctor, Aimee, I would imagine a doctor could diagnose anything, and you could be bounced from pillar to post to try and get a diagnosis. Now, unfortunately for you're beyond that, but somebody that maybe is recently diagnosed, a pathway into a specialist unit in the HSE would be something you'd be looking for.
100%. It's taken me, I have it 7 years now, and it's taken me about 5.5, 6 years to find the right team, but it's just, FND is only just starting to get noticed in Ireland, and we hope then with this notice and awareness that we can hopefully build more like clinics specifically for FND.